Hi Year 8 and welcome to another help video. This one is going to be on Madam Slam by Mark Sheppard. And I really hope that you enjoy this poem. It is a lot of fun. And maybe there might be aspects of it that some of you might recognise. I'm not going to read the whole poem to you. I'm going to invite you to spend a little bit of time doing that yourself. You might quite enjoy hearing the sound of it as you read it yourself. When you do read it, you need to be thinking, how does the poet present Madam Slam to the reader? Because that is the key question that I want you to try to write me about 200 words responding to this week. Let's have a quick look at the key questions. You can see them here. So first of all, I want to just remind you that what I want is more than just you answering the key questions. I want you to try to write 200 words. So the idea is that you use these questions to start with to kind of get your ideas together, and then you could try to incorporate your answers to those questions into your essay. I did a video last week showing you how you can kind of get from the prompt questions to writing 200 words. So please do have a go at that. So we've got the prompt questions here. I'm going to move them out of the way in a moment and make some annotations on a copy of the poem that I've printed out on a separate sheet. I find when I'm writing about poetry or trying to understand poetry, it's really useful for me to have plain paper around so that I can make my notes and I can highlight the important words and that sort of thing. I want you just to have a little look at this bit first of all. So remember, the way that these slides work is at the top of each slide, there's a little explanation of the poem, and that can be really helpful. And in fact, I've highlighted a particularly helpful word for you. In this poem, the poem presents the turbulent relationship between a teenager, Madam Slam, and her parent. So we need to be clear, what does turbulent mean? Well, turbulent means kind of argumentative, stormy, and kind of constantly changing. Okay, so basically, the teenager and her parent, they are arguing a lot of the time. So that helps us as a starting point to try to understand the poem. So let me move this out of the way and we can go through and we can have a look at some of the key questions together. So the first question you've got is, who is Madam Slam and what's happening in the poem? Well, we've already just had that explained, haven't we? Madam Slam is a teenager. Okay, and the thing that's happening in the poem is that the teenager is arguing with somebody, or possibly a series of people, but they are arguing, let's say, with a parent. Okay, so that's what seems to be happening in the poem. The poem is written in lots of very short 3-line stanzas, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. But I kind of find that the stanzas sort of work as kind of sets of stanzas like this, and I kind of seem to think it's almost like one voice in the first 3 lines and then somebody else's voice in the second, but you might maybe make your own mind up about that. So let's have a little bit of a think about this word, madam. Okay, it's quite an interesting word because it can be interpreted in different ways. So it can be a very polite way to address somebody. So if you were writing a formal letter to a lady whose name you didn't know, you might say, "Dear Madam." Okay, or it might be a respectful way to address a lady whose name you don't know in person. So, for example, when I went to Marks and Spencer's this weekend, when I arrived at the end of the queue, the assistant in the shop said, "Here's a trolley, madam." So they didn't know my name, but they addressed me that way. In this poem, though, it means something quite specific. Okay, sometimes the word madam can be a little bit a little bit rude. It can be a bit of an insult. Okay, so it's kind of like it's mildly insulting. Okay, and it tends to refer to young women who are behaving unreasonably. Okay, so perhaps another word that somebody else might use is the word bossy. I don't really like the word bossy. I think it's a little bit sexist. I think this term of behaving like a little madam is a little bit sexist as well. But if it helps you understand it, perhaps you might want to consider that word bossy as well. Although you shouldn't really ever call anyone bossy. I think it's becoming very old-fashioned. Okay, so how does the word madam fit into the ideas in this poem? Well, I think the idea is that the teenager in the poem is behaving unreasonably. So that's kind of why she's being called a madam. Okay, so there you go. We're on question 3 already. Question 3 is, what is the effect of the word slam being repeated throughout the poem? Okay, I'm going to read you the first 4 stanzas, or maybe I might even do 6, just so that you can get the idea. Madam slam, door slam, bang slam, shut. Madam slam, yes slam, no slam, but. Madam slam, I slam, don't slam, care. Madam slam, it slam, not slam, fair. Okay, how does the word slam, as it keeps on being repeated, how does it kind of affect you? Well, sometimes it's her name, but it's this idea of there being doors kind of constantly being slammed, and that seems to sort of get in the way of them actually having a conversation. So it kind of is this idea of the door slamming is the real problem in their relationship. The other thing that the word slam being repeated does is it kind of creates a sense of rhythm, and it kind of makes it quite enjoyable to sort of listen to the words of the poem. I guess on the other hand, it kind of almost captures the sense of what it might be like living in a house with this sort of turbulent relationship. So slam is a really, really good example of an onomatopoeic word. O-N-O-M. Oh my goodness. Onomatopoeia. Okay, so I always remember how to spell this word because it's got a P-O-E in it, and it's a bit like in a poem. You can also sing it to the tune of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. O-N-O-M-A-T-O-P-O-E-I-A. See, that's a handy trick, isn't it? So we've thought about slam being repeated through the poem. Question 4. Why has the poet written so many stanzas and why only 3 lines long? There are a lot of stanzas, aren't there? I think it might be that the number of stanzas reflect the amount of times they're arguing. It seems that they're arguing a lot. It seems as if there's a lot of doors slamming and a lot of arguments going on. So perhaps it might be like that. Why only 3 lines long? Well, I don't think anyone's really getting to say very much, are they? They don't seem to finish their sentences seem to get interrupted. And so perhaps it's also a way to communicate the frustration and the way that actually arguing isn't a very effective way of communicating. Question 5. What impact does the final line of the poem create? So yeah, this line here, we've got it's got a 1-word stanza. Let's read the 4 verses before that, and we'll see kind of what the effect has. So if I go here, my word, there was just a massive bee. It's flown out the window. Goodness me, I nearly screamed on my video. Right. Madam slam, bomb slam, the slam, bass, Madam Slam, shut slam, your slam, face. Madam Slam, good slam, time slam, not. Madam Slam, what slam, whatever. Okay, so I think that this kind of bit at the end, it kind of creates a bit of a sense of anticlimax. Just when you think that something might happen or the arguments might be resolved, instead what happens is the arguments sort of kind of fizzle out. I think certainly a few years ago as well, this word whatever is kind of, it has a strong association with kind of cliched depictions of what teenagers are like. So it's kind of like a sort of typical thing in a way for a teenager to say, oh, whatever. And I think the poet is kind of sort of being a bit funny about that, really, and making a bit of a joke about, aren't teenagers a bit funny and the sorts of things they say. But it also kind of shows that all the arguments, in the end, they do fizzle out. And perhaps, hopefully, even though when you're going through adolescence, arguing might be one of the things that happens, there's lots of boundary pushing and that sort of thing. But ultimately, in the end, adolescence is something that we get through and the arguments do stop in the end. So hopefully that will give you plenty of ideas about how the poet presents Madam Slam to the reader, and you can use that to inform your 200 words.